If you want to know the single most dangerous type of fat in your body, forget what you see in the mirror. Forget the number on the scale, the fat that's killing people, the fat linked to 14 different types of cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and dementia. You can't even see it. It's called visceral fat. And right now, even if you're thin, even if you exercise regularly, you could be packed with it. Hi, I'm Dr. Becker. I am an emergency medicine physician and metabolism researcher. After nearly 30 years studying how the body stores and burns fat, I've seen what happens when visceral fat takes over. People who look healthy on the outside are metabolically sick on the inside. Their organs are suffocating under layers of inflammatory fat. But here's what excites me about 2026. The research has finally caught up. We now know exactly how to target visceral fat, specifically how to activate your body's fat-burning systems, and how to do it with food and simple lifestyle changes that anyone can implement today. In this video, I'm going to show you my personal protocol for burning visceral fat. We'll explore what visceral fat actually is and why it's so dangerous, how your body has a built-in fat-burning system that most people have never activated, and the exact foods and timing strategies that clinical studies have proven incinerate visceral fat. Most importantly, if I wanted to burn visceral fat in 2026, this is exactly what I would do. Step by step, quick favor. I see messages from people who've watched several of my videos and didn't realize they weren't subscribed. Could you double check right now? It's free, takes 2 seconds, and helps this channel reach more people who need this information. Now, here's the thing most people don't understand about body fat. Not all fat is created equal. You have 2 completely different types of fat in your body, and they behave like different organs with different functions. The fat you can see, the stuff under your skin, around your arms, your thighs, your belly, that's called subcutaneous fat. Sub means under, cutaneous means skin. This is the fat you pinch. This is the fat that creates muffin tops and love handles. This fat is relatively harmless metabolically. It's not great if you have too much of it, but it's not actively killing you. The second type of fat is visceral fat. Visceral refers to your viscera, your internal organs. This fat is packed deep inside your abdominal cavity, wrapped around your liver, your pancreas, your intestines, your kidneys. You cannot see it, you cannot pinch it. A person can be thin, have a flat stomach, and be absolutely loaded with visceral fat. Think of your body like a FedEx box. The box itself might be small and thin, but you can pack that box completely full of styrofoam peanuts. From the outside, the box looks fine, but inside, it's bursting with packing material, putting pressure on everything. That's visceral fat. It doesn't matter if you have a big body or a small body. You can be skinny as a stick and have dangerous levels of visceral fat choking your organs. Why is visceral fat so dangerous? Because it's not just storage. Visceral fat is metabolically active. It's constantly releasing inflammatory chemicals into your bloodstream. Chemicals called cytoines, interleukin-6, tumor necrosis factor alpha, C-reactive protein. These chemicals create chronic inflammation throughout your entire body. And inflammation is the root cause of almost every chronic disease. Cancer thrives in an inflammatory environment. If you have a microscopic tumor, which everyone develops as they age, putting that tumor in an inflammatory environment is like pouring gasoline on embers. You go from a tiny, harmless cluster of cells to a raging cancer. A study from Cornell University followed 3,000 Swedish women for 13 years. These weren't obese women. They were normal size. Some were even thin. But researchers measured their body composition with DEXA scans at the beginning of the study. They could see exactly how much visceral fat each woman had, even though it was invisible from the outside. Over 13 years, they tracked who developed breast cancer. Women with high visceral fat had a 3-fold increase in breast cancer risk compared to women with low visceral fat, 3 times the risk. And this was independent of their total body weight. You could be thin and have high visceral fat, and your cancer risk was just as elevated as someone who was obese. But it's not just breast cancer. Excess visceral fat has been linked to increased risk of 14 other cancers: colon cancer, ovarian cancer, lung cancer, prostate cancer, pancreatic cancer, liver cancer. The list keeps growing. The mechanism is the same. Visceral fat creates inflammation. Inflammation promotes cancer growth. It's a direct line from fat to disease. Visceral fat also wreaks havoc on your metabolism. It releases fatty acids directly into your portal vein, the vein that goes straight to your liver. Your liver gets flooded with fat. It can't process it all. The fat accumulates in liver cells. You develop fatty liver disease, which 30% of American adults now have. Your liver can't regulate blood sugar properly. Your pancreas has to pump out more insulin to compensate. Eventually, your cells become resistant to insulin. You develop type 2 diabetes. Your blood pressure goes up because the inflammatory chemicals damage your blood vessel walls. You develop cardiovascular disease. This entire cascade, metabolic syndrome, diabetes, heart disease, fatty liver, it all starts with excess visceral fat. Now, here's something that shocked me when I first learned it. Where do you think you gain visceral fat first when you start putting on weight? 90% of people think it's around the belly, which makes sense because that's what you see in the mirror. Your waistline expands, but that's actually not where you gain it first. The first place you accumulate visceral fat is in your tongue. Your tongue gets fat. Let me explain the anatomy because this is fascinating. The tip of your tongue is pure muscle, an acrobat capable of complex movements. The middle of your tongue is also muscular, strong enough to move food around your mouth. But the back third of your tongue is normally marbled like a ribeye steak with fat. That marbling is normal. But when you start gaining weight, even if you're thin, one of the first places visceral fat accumulates is in that back third of your tongue. It gets more and more marbled. This has been studied in Sweden in young, thin women. As they gained even small amounts of visceral fat, it showed up in their tongues first. And here's how they knew. Their partners reported that they started snoring. Why? When you sleep, your muscles relax. If your tongue is fat and it relaxes, it falls back and blocks your airway. You develop sleep apnea. Even thin people with visceral fat get sleep apnea because their fat tongue is obstructing their breathing at night. This tells you something critical. Visceral fat isn't just in your belly. It infiltrates organs throughout your body. Your tongue, your liver, your pancreas, your heart. There's a condition called fatty heart, where visceral fat wraps around the heart muscle itself. This impairs the heart's ability to pump. People develop heart failure not from blocked arteries, but from fat suffocating the heart muscle. So the question becomes, how do you get rid of visceral fat? The old answer was eat less, exercise more, create a caloric deficit that works, but it's slow, it's miserable, and most people can't sustain it. The new science shows there's a much better way. Your body has a built-in, visceral fat-burning system that most people have never activated. It's called brown fat, and understanding how it works changes everything. Most people think all body fat is white fat, the jiggly storage fat. But you also have brown fat. Brown fat is completely different. It's not jiggly. It's thin like sheets of paper. And it's located deep in your body, around your neck, under your collarbone, around your spine, between your shoulder blades. You can't see it or feel it, but it's there, and its function is remarkable. Brown fat is a metabolic furnace. It's packed with mitochondria, the energy-producing engines of your cells. Mitochondria contain a lot of iron. When iron oxidizes, it turns brown. That's why brown fat is brown. It's loaded with these iron-rich mitochondria. When brown fat activates, those mitochondria fire up and generate heat. They burn energy to keep you warm. This is called thermogenesis. But here's the critical part. Where does brown fat get the energy it burns? It pulls it from white fat. Specifically, it preferentially burns visceral fat first. Brown fat is good fat that burns bad fat. It's like having an internal fat incinerator. When brown fat activates, it sends signals to your white fat cells saying, "Send me fuel." The white fat releases stored energy. The brown fat burns it, and your visceral fat melts away. For years, scientists thought only babies had brown fat, that it disappeared in adults. But advanced imaging revealed that adults have significant amounts of brown fat, and people who are lean and metabolically healthy have more active brown fat. People who are obese and metabolically sick have less active brown fat. The question became, can you activate brown fat to burn more visceral fat? The answer is absolutely yes. There are several ways to activate brown fat. The most well-known is cold exposure. When you get cold, your body needs to generate heat to survive. Brown fat fires up. This is why cold plunges, ice baths, and sleeping in cold rooms have become popular. The cold triggers a stress response. Your brain releases epinephrine and norepinephrine, adrenaline hormones. These hormones bind to receptors on brown fat cells called beta-3 adenuric receptors. When that receptor gets activated, it's like turning a key in an ignition. The brown fat engine starts. It begins burning fuel, generating heat, pulling energy from your visceral fat stores. A study from the National Institutes of Health found that when people were exposed to cold temperatures for just 2 hours daily, their brown fat activity increased by 45%. Over 6 weeks, they lost an average of 5 lbs of visceral fat without changing their diet. The cold activated their brown fat. The brown fat burned their visceral fat. But here's the thing, cold exposure is uncomfortable. Not everyone wants to take ice baths or sleep in a 60-degree room. So researchers started asking what else activates brown fat. This is where it gets really exciting because the answer is food. Certain foods contain compounds that activate the same beta-3 adenuric receptors that cold activates. They flip the same switch, start the same engine without the discomfort of freezing. The pathway works like this. The food compound activates the beta-3 receptor that triggers the production of something called uncoupling protein 1, UCP1. UCP1 lives in the mitochondria. When UCP1 gets activated, the mitochondria start burning fuel to produce heat instead of storing it as ATP. This is called uncoupling because you're uncoupling energy production from energy storage. The energy gets released as heat instead of being stored. The result is thermogenesis. Your body temperature goes up slightly. You're burning calories. And the fuel source is visceral fat. This is the mechanism. Now let me give you the foods that activate this pathway in humans with exact doses from clinical studies. The first and most powerful is green tea. Green tea contains catechins, specifically EGCG, the compound I've talked about before. EGCG activates brown fat through multiple mechanisms. It triggers the beta-3 receptor. It increases UCP1 production, and it inhibits an enzyme called COMT that normally breaks down norepinephrine. By inhibiting COMT, EGCG keeps norepinephrine levels higher for longer, which means brown fat stays activated longer. A study from Morik University in the Netherlands gave people 3 cups of green tea daily for 8 weeks. These were women between ages 30 and 60, all slightly overweight. At the end of 8 weeks, the green tea group lost an average of 2 lbs more than the control group. But here's what matters. They lost almost 1 full inch from their waist circumference. Waist circumference is the best surrogate measure of visceral fat. When your waist shrinks, you're losing visceral fat. The green tea activated their brown fat. The brown fat burned visceral fat. Their waist circumference decreased. They also had lower blood pressure, better fasting glucose, and improved cholesterol levels. All markers of metabolic health improving because they lost visceral fat. Another study from Thron University of Medical Sciences looked at 63 men and women ages 35 to 65 with type 2 diabetes. They gave them 4 cups of green tea daily for 2 months. The tea group lost 3 lbs of body weight, but they lost almost 2 in from their waist circumference, 2 belt notches. That's substantial visceral fat reduction. And remember, these were people with established diabetes, metabolic dysfunction. The green tea still worked. The dose that matters is 2 to 4 cups of green tea daily, not occasionally. Daily, you can use regular green tea or you can use matcha. which is even more potent. Matcha is ground whole tea leaves. When you drink matcha, you consume the entire leaf, not just what dissolves in water. 1 cup of matcha delivers the caffeine content of about 10 cups of regular green tea. If you're serious about burning visceral fat, 1 cup of matcha daily is extremely effective. You can also try oolong tea, which is partially oxidized, or even pure tea, a fermented black tea from China. Pure contains caffeines plus beneficial bacteria from fermentation that improve gut health and metabolism. Studies show pure tea shrinks waist circumference as effectively as green tea. The second food category is omega-3 rich fish. This surprised researchers, but the data is clear. Omega-3 fatty acids activate brown fat and burn visceral fat. A study from Iceland gave people salmon 3 times per week for 8 weeks. The salmon group, combined with modest caloric restriction, lost up to 15 lbs. But here's what shocked the researchers. They ran a parallel group eating cod instead of salmon. Cod is not considered an oily fish. Salmon has 1565 mg of omega-3s per 5 oz serving. Cod has only 284 mg. That's 5 times less. The researchers expected cod to have little effect, but the cod group lost 10 lbs over 8 weeks, almost as much as the salmon group. This tells us something critical. You don't need massive amounts of omega-3s to activate brown fat and burn visceral fat. Even the modest amount in cod, 284 mg per serving, is enough to flip the metabolic switch. This opened my eyes because it means almost any seafood will work. Let me translate that 284 mg dose into other seafood. 4 medium Gulf shrimp contain 284 mg of omega-3s. 8 oysters contain that amount. 1 forkful of mackerel, which is very oily, contains that amount. Half a piece of halibut, the size of half a deck of cards, contains that amount. You don't need to eat salmon and mackerel every day. You can eat shrimp, oysters, any fish or seafood 3 times per week, and you'll get enough omega-3s to activate brown fat. The mechanism is that omega-3s increase brown fat mass and activity. They also improve insulin sensitivity, which helps your body burn fat instead of storing it. If you don't eat seafood, consider an algae-based omega-3 supplement. The dose is 1,000 to 2,000 mg of combined EPA and DHA daily. That's the amount that shows benefits in studies. The third category is spicy foods, specifically capsaicin from chili peppers. Capsaicin activates brown fat by binding to receptors called TORP-V1 receptors. These are heat-sensing receptors. When capsaicin binds to them, it creates a sensation of heat. Your body responds by activating brown fat to regulate temperature. Studies from Japan show that people who consume capsaicin, equivalent to 1 hot pepper daily, have increased brown fat activity and burn more calories at rest. Over 12 weeks, capsaicin supplementation led to modest but significant fat loss, especially visceral fat. You don't need to eat ghost peppers, regular jalapenos, cayenne pepper, chili powder. Any pepper that makes your mouth feel warm contains capsaicin. Adding spicy foods to your meals activates thermogenesis. You'll actually feel warmer after eating spicy food because your brown fat is firing up. The fourth category is foods containing urolic acid. This compound is found in apple peels, especially dried apples, and in herbs like rosemary and sage. Urolic acid increases brown fat activity and helps convert white fat into beige fat, which is white fat that's taken on brown fat characteristics. It starts acting like brown fat burning energy instead of storing it. Now let me talk about timing, because when you eat is just as important as what you eat. Your metabolism is hardwired to operate in 2 modes. When you eat, your insulin rises to shuttle energy into cells for storage. During this fed state, your metabolism focuses on storing energy, not burning it. When you're not eating, insulin drops. Your metabolism switches gears. It shifts from storage mode to burning mode. It starts pulling energy out of fat cells to fuel your body. This is when visceral fat gets burned. The problem is most people eat from the moment they wake up until the moment they go to bed. They're in storage mode all day. Their metabolism never switches to burning mode. They never tap into their fat stores. Here's what I do personally, and this is based on both research and clinical experience. I compress my eating into a smaller window to maximize fat burning time. Here's my exact protocol. I eat dinner at 7 p.m. I finish and put dishes away by 8 p.m. I don't eat anything after 8. No snacks, no dessert, nothing. I close my eating window. I go to bed around 11 p.m. That's 3 hours of fat burning before sleep. I sleep from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. That's 8 hours of fat burning while sleeping. When I wake up at 7 a.m., I don't immediately eat breakfast like my mother taught me. I get up, I shower, I get dressed, I check email, I go for a walk. I wait until 8 or 9 a.m. before eating. That's 1 to 2 extra hours of fat burning. Total 3 hours before bed, 8 hours sleeping, 1 to 2 hours after waking. I've created 12 to 13 hours of fat burning time. Half the day, my metabolism is in burning mode, pulling energy from visceral fat. I eat my meals between 9 a.m. and 8 p.m. That's an 11-hour eating window with a 13-hour fasting window. It's incredibly easy. I don't feel deprived. I eat normal meals, but by simply compressing when I eat, I've doubled the time my body spends burning fat. If you want to go more aggressive, you can skip breakfast entirely. Wake up, go straight to lunch at noon or 1 p.m. Now you've extended your fast to 16 or 17 hours. You're in full intermittent fasting territory. Studies show that 16-hour fasts trigger significant visceral fat burning. Your insulin stays low all morning. Your body has no choice but to pull energy from fat stores over weeks and months. This creates substantial visceral fat loss. If you want to truly jumpstart fat loss, you can compress eating even further. Have a light lunch, then don't eat again until dinner. You've compressed all your eating into a 6 or 8 hour window. This is called time-restricted eating. And the research on visceral fat reduction is remarkable. But even the simple 12-hour fast I described works. You don't have to be extreme. Just stop eating after dinner and wait a few hours after waking before eating. That alone will shift your metabolism toward fat burning. Now, let me address a critical point. The mirror and the scale don't tell you what's happening with visceral fat. When you step on a scale, that number represents your bones, which you want to be heavy and dense, your muscle, which you want to preserve or build, water, which you need for hydration, and fat. The scale can't distinguish between subcutaneous fat and visceral fat. You could lose 10 libs of visceral fat and gain 5 libs of muscle. The scale shows a 5 lib loss, but your metabolic health has improved dramatically. The better measure is waist circumference. Get a tape measure. Measure around your waist at the level of your belly button. Don't suck in. Just breathe normally and measure. Write that number down. Every 2 weeks, measure again. If your waist circumference is decreasing, you're losing visceral fat, even if the scale hasn't moved much. The studies I cited measured waist circumference, not just weight, because that's the true indicator of visceral fat loss. A 1 reduction in waist circumference represents significant visceral fat reduction. A 2 reduction is major. That's what the green tea studies showed. That's what the fish studies showed. That's what time-restricted eating shows. Another option is a DEXA scan. This is a special imaging scan that measures body composition. It tells you exactly how much visceral fat you have, how much subcutaneous fat, how much muscle, bone density, everything. Many hospitals and fitness centers offer DEXA scans for under $100. Get a baseline scan, implement the strategies I've outlined, then get another scan in 3 months. You'll see exactly how much visceral fat you've lost. It's incredibly motivating to see those numbers drop. Now let me give you my complete protocol. This is what I would do if I wanted to burn visceral fat in 2026. I'm laying this out step by step. First, I would start every morning with 1 cup of matcha or 3 cups of green tea throughout the day. This activates brown fat and keeps it active all day. Second, I would eat seafood 3 times per week. Any seafood, shrimp, fish, oysters, whatever I enjoy. This provides omega-3s to support brown fat activity and improve insulin sensitivity. Third, I would add spicy foods to at least 1 meal daily, chili flakes on eggs, jalapenos in my salad, cayenne pepper in soup, just enough to feel a little heat. This activates thermogenesis. Fourth, I would eat apples with the peel on and use rosemary and sage in cooking for aolic acid. Fifth, I would implement a 12 to 13 hour overnight fast. Stop eating by 8 p.m. Don't eat again until 8 or 9 a.m. This is easy and sustainable. Sixth, once a week, I would do a longer fast. Skip breakfast, eat lunch, and dinner only. This creates a 16 to 17 hour fast once weekly to really accelerate visceral fat burning. Seventh, I would measure my waist circumference every 2 weeks to track progress. This keeps me accountable and motivated. Eighth, if possible, I would get a baseline DEXA scan, then another one in 3 months to see exact visceral fat changes. Ninth, I would sleep in a slightly cooler room, not frigid, just cool enough that I need a blanket around 65 to 68 degrees. This mildly activates brown fat overnight. 10th, I would avoid the foods that promote visceral fat accumulation, specifically ultra-processed foods, foods high in added sugar and excessive alcohol. These drive insulin up, promote fat storage, and create the inflammation that makes visceral fat so dangerous. That's the complete protocol. It's not complicated. It doesn't require exotic supplements or expensive treatments. It's green tea, seafood, spices, time-restricted eating, and cooler sleep. Every element is backed by clinical research. Every element activates pathways that specifically target visceral fat.